Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is episode 27 of the SANE Show, the show about nothing and everything. I got special guests with me. I'm really excited for this one, and I'm really excited for everybody listening. Definitely going to be some things to take away from this. We got Wilt Wallace, Vice President for Urban and Rhythm Promotions at Warner Brothers Records. How you doing, Wilt?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm good. Appreciate you asking. Excited to have you on here. I've been really looking forward. I know I kind of told some people about this coming up, so it's a lot of people excited to hear this one. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. Today we're going to talk about the state of the label, and we're also going to talk about R&B music, and then of course we always got a trending topic that we're going to discuss. We'll reveal that later, and then after that, got our interview with Will just to learn a little bit more about what he's doing for Warner Bros. About his career. You guys get a little bit of insight into him. To kick it off, the state of the label. So, like I was mentioning, before, the recording, just how the label is doing now in, this current state with digital streaming, continuing to be on the rise. And, having been in the industry myself, I find myself constantly, having conversations with people, whether it be, other promoters or artists or agents. And of course, I'm always seeing a lot of chatter going on between other people about, the state of the label versus streaming platforms. So I guess from your position, what are you seeing going on, like, that's happening out here with the labels?
Well, I feel like it's a really good time for the labels. You're seeing the labels really perform well financially, and you're
Hmm.
seeing growth. You know, there was a time period kind of early in my career. I first started my first position at Warner Brothers in 2006, and it was during the what I call the download era. Where you had the file sharing and the Napsters and the Lime Wires and everything like
Mm-hmm.
that. And then even when it came to a sales and consumption side, there wasn't the pirated side, but the actual legitimate sales. A lot of that was single driven through iTunes. So the profit margins weren't great. There wasn't, a lot of growth. It was actually a lot of recession. It was a lot of kind of moving in the other direction, coming off of the
Mm-hmm.
CD era, which was huge profit making era for record companies because the
Right.
profit margins on CDs were huge, and you had albums going 10 times platinum, and
Mm-hmm.
when you have a profit margin of a product that you make for like $1 to $5 at the maximum, and you're selling it for 20, and you're selling 10 million of them. I mean, you can do the math yourself. So, I don't, of course the record labels aren't back to that era, and I don't know that we ever see that type of success again so far as
Mm-hmm.
the profit margins of that era. But compared to the era where I started with the file sharing and the downloading, and when pirating was rampant, you've seen the labels bounce back and have a resurgence of sorts. So it's really good time.
So you made me think of some things because you were talking about with things like CDs and whatnot. And one of the things I was thinking about earlier, actually, I always have conversations with people about singles versus album. And I know, I think it was either the Hollywood Reporter or Rolling Stone put out an article earlier in the year talking about sales, how album sales have seen, I guess they kind of declined, but sales for singles went up, and that people, I guess, spending more time listening to singles versus going through an entire album. So I guess what's your take? What's your take on that as far as singles and albums?
I think that there's a couple factors. One
Hmm.
being streaming era that we're in currently, where a lot of people are going to playlists, which might be
Hmm.
a collection of songs from many different albums. So you're not consuming the album as one product, is one complete body of work. You may just have a playlist that you follow that has various songs from different albums. The
Hmm.
other thing that I see is people's attention spans and the way that they consume entertainment has changed. A lot of people consume the majority of their entertainment on their phone, and you might not sit in your phone for 60 minutes straight to listen to a full album, a full body of work. You might just, okay, I'm gonna catch a couple songs, then on to the next thing in between, doing social media apps, or making phone calls, sending text messages, other things you're doing with that same device. When it used to be at one
Hmm.
time you would have, like I said, the CD would be the album, and that kind of you put that in your CD player, which most people don't have anymore, and you
Right.
would be able to sit in one setting and consume the album. But just
Yeah.
culturally, people, I mean, me and my friends joke about it and kind of call it like the fast food or microwave generation of,
Hmm.
things are just consumed a lot faster, and it's more about time
Yeah.
efficiency over
Hmm.
quality and things like that, but there's still a
Yeah.
place for albums, and there, niche audiences that love the album. I'm a person that
Yeah.
grew up listening to albums, so I
Hmm.
still would love to dissect the whole body of work as a whole, listen to the sequencing, catch the story, because
Hmm.
I almost hear music as the way people see it as a movie, like it's visual to me, So I
Right.
like to consume it as a full product, and a lot of artists that I work with or speak with say that they like to deliver it that way, but it's just
Hmm.
the habits of the consumer have changed, and the way the music is
Right.
consumed typically is not the same. And a lot of the younger generation, I'm 38 myself, so a lot of people that are, probably under 25 and didn't grow up
Yeah.
in the CD era or the cassette tape era or different things
Yeah.
like that, maybe aren't used to consuming music like that. They're just
Right.
used to, single or whatever song, or, a lot of kids go on
Hmm.
YouTube and pull up whatever their favorite song is and consume it that way. There's a
Hmm.
lot of different factors, but I think that just the habits of the consumers, the way they digest music, and also the attention span of
Hmm.
people in culture has kind of been a big change in it.
Right, right, right. I definitely agree. I'm thinking about it. I'm 26 years old, and I probably have a handful of CDs I got growing up, and of course using Apple Music now, and I'm downloading just about everything. But one of the things I'll tell you though is that I've learned to, because with the way things are now, I've learned to appreciate a good album more.
Yeah,
Pretty much those people who put out a good album, those are typically my favorite artists
yeah. I
that I'm
mean,
listening
yeah,
to. Yeah.
because that's like fine dining. But but
Right.
also if time is currency, who has the
Yeah.
time to invest in fine dining every night? You know what I mean?
Right.
So sometimes,
Exactly.
but and I don't mean to cut you off, but one thing that we've also
No, it's good.
seen a resurgence in is vinyl sales. But again, it's like you're not going to
Yeah.
go buy a $20-$25 piece of vinyl unless it's somebody that you really appreciate, and you're going to spend the time.
Exactly.
It's a fine piece of art. It's almost like
Exactly.
that type of thing. So yeah, there's still a place for a great album, and usually the
Right.
best artists, the ones who are timeless and passed generationally, are the
Right.
ones who can create a cohesive body of work. Music is not always about the full appreciation of full body of work. Sometimes you just need a 3-minute song to put you in a certain mood, or just something
True.
up tempo to keep you going in the gym, or
That's
what I'm
very
saying,
true.
just depending on what
Right.
type of place you're in at that time. So
Right. Before I get to the trending topic, it's funny you said microwave music, because one of the earlier episodes is actually called Microwave Music. I had my buddy on who's a rapper,
okay,
and he was talking about how a lot of artists are putting out microwave music. So I thought you made that come to mind when you
yeah.
said that, because that's definitely a thing now. Let's go ahead and get into the trending topic. This is brought to you by the Wall Street Journal. Everybody knows where to find them. The article is music is booming, but Spotify isn't the winner. And just some of the highlights globally, the music industry revenue rose 9.7% last year, which was the best in at least 20 years. This was according to data released Tuesday by International Federation of Phonographic Industry, and saying that streaming drove the tempo with growth of 34%. So Spotify, I guess, didn't get most of that pie again, because we were just talking about the state of the label, and we see the music industry is booming. I guess did the labels benefit off of that as well?
Yeah, yeah, the labels definitely have benefited from the revenue that comes from streaming and that growth, that industry growth. That has definitely been something that has helped the label significantly. I think one of the challenges that Spotify has is that they're a standalone music streaming service. Unlike
Mm-hmm.
Apple, they sell phones, they sell laptops. Their music
Right.
streaming service is a small piece of their business. So if
Right.
they can
Right.
use their streaming service to advertise their other products, and
Right.
if they have exclusive rights to the new Drake album or whatever, and that makes more
Mm-hmm.
people come and buy iPhones, they profit off the iPhones. They're not really worried about losing money on what it costs to have the rights to the music
Right.
versus what they make off a subscription.
Right.
Spotify, that's all they got is what they make off a subscription. That's where you
Yeah.
can see, one of the challenges they have that some of their competitors may not have. Label wise, it has been very beneficial to us, the streaming, because, what I look at it like this, and this is just my personal opinion, is I look at streaming as long money. An album traditionally in the CD era, it's all about those first week sales, right? And you sell the album,
Right.
but once I've sold it to you, you bought it. You can go listen to it 100 million times for the next 20 years. I only get that
Right.
first $15 to $20 you paid me when it came out. But streaming, I might only get a fraction of a cent each time you listen to my song. But as you
Right.
listen to it over time, it's almost like you're renting the music. You're paying for the subscription every month, which is how Spotify makes their music. Spotify is paying the
Mm-hmm.
label for the rights to the music. So each time the
Mm-hmm.
song plays, Spotify, Apple, whoever has to pay the label. That builds up revenue. So
Got it.
again, so your catalog can actually live a lot longer and continue to earn a lot longer when it used to be, okay, once the CD's out of cycle, unless something, in culture happens to make people revisit the album, sales on it are
Mm-hmm.
pretty much, dormant at that point.
Right.
But now with streaming, it just continues and continues and continues. And it's the same thing in
Right.
television when you have things like Netflix and other,
Mm-hmm.
subscription based streaming platforms.
Right.
So again, it's like the long money, like, the product can
Mm-hmm.
continue to earn. It's smaller, profit margin, but over a longer time, it can build up and be, very beneficial. Yeah.
I agree. I agree. You made me think of something when you were talking about Spotify and just how I guess like they're like standalone, because you brought up a really good example when you brought up how Apple, that's just a fraction of their revenue, the streaming services,
Yep.
and their bread and butter is their devices, their laptops
Right.
and the iPhones and all the other good stuff. What you made me think about though, because one of the things I've been seeing lately is pretty much Spotify and Hulu teaming up together.
Right.
And it was once a thing of where if you had Spotify, you got like a discount or like free access to Hulu. And now it's a thing of, okay, if you, I think if you have Hulu, you'll get Spotify for free or vice versa, is one of the two. And they're, I guess, leveraging each other
Mm-hmm.
to, because I mean, they're both streaming services
Yep.
and they both of them are trying to build up their subscriber base,
Yep.
and especially when and it's just, I know my brain was going all last week. Disney just bought out 20th Century Fox.
Yep.
One of the things that made me think about, okay, right now they're laying off employees,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the things I'm also thinking about is, okay, what's going to happen with some of the other assets? One of the things that came to the forefront was Hulu. Are they going to rebrand it? Are they going to sell it off? Or, are they?
Right.
And so that makes me think about, because again, if something happens to Hulu, that's going to have some kind of effect on Spotify.
Right. Right. It's like a
Right.
domino
I'm
effect.
thinking like,
Yeah.
okay, would
Yeah.
Spotify be able to buy Hulu? Like what's, so I feel like in the coming years, there's something's going to happen that's going to push Spotify in a certain direction,
Yep.
whether, acquisition or they, because obviously you see they're making moves for certain reasons, they gotta find additional streams of income. And that's why this whole thing's going on with Hulu, and yet again, it doesn't surprise me that they're Spotify isn't the winner. At the same time, though, I'm noticing that they're buying up all of these podcasting companies or platforms companies, that
Mm-hmm.
have been big in the podcasting industry because there's been some growth there. But at the same time, my question to that is, okay, even though I have a podcast clearly, and I'm glad that there's growth in this part of the business, but is that alone, buying up these podcasting companies, is that alone going to be enough to sustain them? So
Yeah.
I think that raises a lot of questions as to what Spotify's future
Yeah.
is going to hold for them
And it's
in the
tricky
next few
because
years.
I agree, and it's really tricky because it's all new, and
Yeah,
you're counting on consumer behavior to
right.
continue to change in the direction of your
Hmm.
favor, So
Right,
you're counting on people to continue to want to pay for music subscriptions every month, and or
right.
maybe have the centralized subscription base where it's like, okay, I pay this one thing and I get Spotify, Hulu, and whatever else, you know what I'm saying? Plus the
Right.
access to these exclusive podcasts that I can't get anywhere else or whatever. So it's an
Right.
interesting time for music and entertainment and
Mm-hmm.
technology. Sometimes being on the cutting edge, like the way Apple was with the iTunes store, can be magical, because when you think about it, all the labels and all the music producers and distributors went through Apple, and that became like almost the centralized store for digital music sales. You can't think of too many other places where you were buying MP3s from. It's mostly through Apple instead of these labels having their own stores or whatever and going direct to consumer. So when it comes to developing consumer profiles and being able to advertise to them and knowing what their preferences are and their likes are, Apple had access to all that information, and the labels and the distributors had to go through them. So, being on the cutting edge of technology can be amazing, but also it's risky to be like a Spotify. And, globally, a lot of other countries moved towards streaming consumption habits faster than the United States. So, we're still catching up. We're, still seeing the subscribers in the United States going up each year, but where does that plateau? And when it does, is it enough? And, it's an interesting time to
Right.
see how these habits are going to go. And like I said, physical sales obviously have been declining for years, to the point where Best Buy phased out CDs. I want to say another big retailer did. I can't remember which one it was. And, I think Walmart still has them, and maybe Target, but it's a small portion of their business when it used to be a huge portion of their business. And it's like, see, is these trends and these consumption habits continue to change, what is that future going to look like for Spotify and others? So it's interesting times, man.
Huh.
Really.
Yeah, you definitely bring up some valid points. You said Best Buy phased out CDs. I was like, wait a minute, they did.
Yeah, I think
And I don't go.
I want to say last
Yeah,
summer, I want to say 2018, like June or July, they made an announcement, like, because remember, like back, I mean, I know you're younger than me, you're in your mid 20s, but still about 10 years ago, you were old enough to remember
yeah.
going into a Best Buy and you saw racks and racks of CDs. And
Right,
then in
right,
the last like 2 years, it all dwindled down to where it went from all these racks of all these artists and genres to like just one rack, and that had all the
right,
CDs they carried, which wasn't much.
right.
Last summer, that they just phased it out altogether. But you
Hmm.
still see, like, with Walmart, especially in like middle America, where maybe people aren't as adapted to the
Hmm.
streaming culture, and maybe people, don't have the unlimited data plans and things like that. You still see people buying CDs, and I think CDs are still
Right.
big in the country music genre. I think CDs
Hmm.
are still big, and like I said, to see a surge after all these years of physical sales decline, to see a surge in vinyl over the last couple of years, because it's like kind of like the trendy cool thing, now.
Yeah.
So it's just
True.
interesting, man, to
Very
see
true.
how that stuff goes. Like, I've even seen some artists release special edition cassette tapes, and they sell for like $20-$30 for a cassette tape. I remember used to buy
Hmm.
cassette tapes for $5, but my question is, like, where do you play a cassette tape these days? But I think it's more just about the memorabilia and actually having it as a keepsake, more so than actually, using it to listen to the music.
Right. Because I'll be honest, even though I listen to all of my music digital, like there's this one album I finally downloaded yesterday. I owned the CD for about 5 years now. I
Uh,
never really listened to the CD, but I listened to it digitally. But at the same time, it's like I want all the physical copies just for purposes of having the memorabilia.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It was me, like, I'm a kid that in the 90s I was ordering Source magazine, double XL. I,
Hmm.
used to cut the pictures out of the rappers and put them on my walls. I used to have,
Oh,
boxes and boxes of CDs and all that.
yeah.
I was that kid, right? And it was a moment, man, when me and my wife were moving from one place to another, and I knew we weren't gonna have as much storage, and I had to look at my boxes of CDs, and I'm like, dang, you gotta go. Like, so I had to sit there for like 2-3 nights and import every CD into my iTunes so I could still have my
Oh
file,
man.
so I could still have my music. Because this is before I
Right.
had this is years ago. So this is before I had a Spotify. Now I have Spotify, Apple,
Yeah.
and Tidal. But this is before I had
Right.
any of those. I don't even know if those services were available then. So I wasn't going to go to the iTunes store and rebuy all these albums. So I'm sitting there physically importing each CD into my iTunes. So I have an iTunes that is just full of old music and all kinds of stuff. Even like some
Wow.
like promo CDs that I got from working from the
Yeah.
label that were like exclusive remixes that maybe
Yeah.
weren't sold in the store and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So, and I have a lot of DJ friends who keep their vinyl for that reason. Like I know guys that,
Yeah.
had to build extra space in their house just to store their vinyl because, they have the
Wow.
exclusive, bad boy remix of a Puffy and Biggie song that never came out. It was
Right.
only white labeled on the vinyl for the DJ, stuff like that. So,
What? That's
yeah,
what's
so it's
up.
like, yeah, so my point is I can relate to you on the whole memorabilia factor, even if you're not really using
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
to listen to the music, still just
Right.
having it as a keepsake. But yeah, I gave
Right.
up all mine and it was a tough moment. Like I shed a little tear, you know what I'm saying? Like I gotta get
Yeah.
rid of my song. I sent him to one of my homeboys thinking he was gonna keep them, like, cause he had a bigger house, and then come to find
Yeah.
out he moved and ended up throwing away my CDs anyway. So
Oh.
whatever. Yeah, it's all gone.
That's tough.
Yeah, it's tough, man. It happens. Charge to the game, man. You gotta just keep it
Right.
moving, man. Just gotta keep it moving.
Word, word. That's true. That's
Yeah.
true. So that was our trending topic, again, brought to you by the Wall Street Journal. Music is booming, but Spotify isn't the winner. Go check it out. It's a great read, a lot of insightful stuff, especially for my industry heads out there. So we're going to get into the next topic, R&B music. So I actually work with an R&B artist or two. And, one of the things as far as booking shows,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I've noticed is overall, not just concerts, but even in sales, it seems that it's tougher for R&B artists these days. And now I'm coming from the approach that, again, kind of what we talked about earlier, this whole quantity over quality.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
when I think about R&B music, most times it's quality music,
Right.
and it takes time for them to put something out, and they're not they typically don't conform to the market. Like
Right.
like country music, R&B music remains true to its form, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So when I look at it, like I appreciate R&B, but at the same time I'm like, man, it's got to be tough out here for R&B right now, and it's like if you're not, in my opinion, it's like if you're not already, if you're not, Tyrese, Usher, maybe Joe, and or like a Brian McKnight, you're gonna have a bit of a time getting your career off the ground compared to maybe a rapper or a pop star. What's your take on it?
I agree with you. It is a tougher climate for R&B than maybe rap or pop music. One of the things with
Hmm.
rap and pop music is typically they stream better than R&B. Typically the younger audience is more in tune with those type of records, but also a lot of that stuff with, I guess, how do I say this? The burden of quality is not as high. So it's like you can make a catchy hip hop song or a catchy, pop song and it can be a hit. But with R&B, it's not very common for you to just make a catchy little jingle and for people to just ride the wave. Like people, when they want to listen to R&B, they want to kind of hear the feel, the soul, the passion. It's a little
Right.
deeper burden of quality that is there.
I agree.
So it's held to almost a higher standard. So it's maybe
That's
not
true.
as easy to break through, because now not only do you have to be talented and have the vocals and have the right music and the right musicians, but now you also got to make a hit. You got to make something that sticks with people,
Right.
that people actually want to continue to sing and memorize the lyrics and, and touches them. So it's a little tougher, but, also you've seen these hybrids of R&B, like some of the stuff that Chris Brown has done and some of the stuff, with Janae Aiko and some of these other artists that, yeah, it's like it's R&B, but it's not R&B. And, some of it has
Right.
hip hop, some of it has pop, some of it's almost like a
Right.
hybrid genre
Yeah.
that has kind of come out that is been successful, but again, it's not
Yeah.
as many artists as maybe you have rappers and pop stars, but also the ones that break through in R&B typically, in my opinion, and again, I don't have stats to back this up, but typically last longer. It feels like, you know what I mean? Like once you
Hmm.
break through in R&B and get that fan base, like the ones you like, people like a Mary J. Blige or a Joe or somebody like they'll
Yeah.
tour for like 20, 30 years, and you don't see many rappers that can do that. You know what I'm saying? You might have
Right.
a
Right.
Jay-Z or a Snoop here or there, but it's not, you
Right.
can't name as many that can stand the test of time.
Right.
You know,
That's
R&B
very true.
music's a little, so again, it's almost like that thing I was talking about, the long money versus the quick money. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
so it is tough, but last year you saw SZA, you saw her, you
Hmm.
saw, we have a group that we work with named Division, from Canada. They're on OVO / Warner Brothers. They're amazing. So you know that, you know, you see what Jacquees has done. And I know a lot of
Yeah.
people, you know, got into kind of the viral debate about King of R&B and B and all that stuff, whatever. But
Yeah.
you can't deny he's been able to, you know, produce hit records and sing cover records that people want to hear, you
Right.
know, and he's been consistent, you
Right.
know, he's been successful. So,
Yeah.
you know, again, you know, and so it's an interesting space for R&B, but I feel like there's still always a space for R&B.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
might
I agree.
not be the quantity, like you said, of some of the hip
Hmm.
hop artists. It's also, you
Hmm.
know, producing R&B is also a little more difficult than producing hip hop. Now there, you can produce some hip hop that is very difficult, like the stuff that Organized Noise
Hmm.
did with Outkast and every, like, I'm not saying that hip hop can't be very intricate, the stuff that Dr. Dre has done, you know, but there's also Fruity Loops type of hip hop that people were producing on, you know, beat machines and stuff that maybe didn't
Yeah.
have the same type of intricacies that quality R&B record has putting into it with the singer and the songwriter and
Hmm.
the levels that you go through, you know, with the music. But I love R&B music.
Oh yeah.
I hope that it
Same.
continues to
Same.
thrive, you know, on some level. I mean, because that's, you can't always just listen to hip hop and pop. You know, sometimes you just are in a mood where only R&B can speak. And like
I
I
agree.
said, you know, the timeless type of records. So from a commerce perspective, maybe R&B doesn't make the same gaudy numbers as hip hop and pop music in this current streaming climate. Because also I think that the consumers for R&B maybe aren't in the streaming base is heavily, maybe, you know. So you know, again, it's just about, in my opinion, this is the key. You know, you just gotta, as an artist, as a producer, as a writer, you kind of have to just find out who your audience is and where they are
Hmm.
and go to them. You know what I mean? So not
Right.
everybody is going to be able to make mass music that streams a billion times and makes millions of dollars. Sometimes, you know, your fan base isn't that, but if you do find a significant enough fan base that rocks with you, you can tour 10 months a year and make good money
Right.
and do other things without having
Right.
mainstream radio play or television looks and stuff
Hmm.
like
That's
that.
very.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of interesting things that you mentioned, and one of them is the. I guess you can almost say, because when you were talking about, like, I guess these different kinds of R&B now, especially when you talk about the Janae Aiko and her and Chris Brown and how they kind of mixed it up a little bit. I think it almost mirrors hip hop
Yeah.
as far as how hip hop has transformed,
Hmm.
and there's all these I like to call little offshoots to hip hop,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm not fond of all of them, but at the same time, it's like it's hot, it's
Yeah.
what people are doing, and then you have those artists who are I say with hip hop, like I would say J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar are probably the closest to say original, for lack of a better term in terms of, but with R&B, yes, and I think that's very cool and definitely adds, I guess, a different flavor because
Yeah.
I am a fan of Janae Aiko and her, and my girl loves her, man,
Yeah. Her is dope.
and
My wife loves her.
um,
She's walking around singing it all day. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and then you even look at like
go ahead.
LMA and like what she was able to do last
Yep,
year. You know what I'm saying? She had an
yep,
incredible year. And you
yep.
know, you made an interesting point too, though, about how the transition of R&B almost mirrors that of hip hop. But when you really think about it on a deeper level, it almost mirrors the transformation of society, right? So, you know,
Mm,
at one time you might have had people that, okay, I listen to urban music, so I only listen to these type of radio stations. Or I listen to pop music, I
yeah,
only listen to these type of radio stations. Or, you know, I listen to backpack hip hop, so I only listen to these type of artists. So that, but with
right,
the invention of the iPod and then on going forward into like these streaming platforms that we use now, it's not very uncommon for people to have a playlist that jumps all around to all different types of genres, and you do have this mashing of different sounds and vibes and cultures. And I think that plays out in the music too, you know, where you see the artists are listening to different types of music and opening themselves up to different types of culture and like my dad said something interesting to me one time. He grew up in an impoverished neighborhood in the South during the Jim Crow era. And he was like, in his neighborhood, until they got a TV set, he didn't know he was poor. Like, they were poor, but because they never saw what rich looked like, they just thought this is just what life is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's like kind of like that now when you think about technology, and now with Instagram and with YouTube and everything, you can see the whole world in the palm of your hand. So now you're exposed to different things that 20, 30 years ago, you'd have to get on a plane to see, you know what I'm saying? Or have, so, it changes. So we all are becoming more hybrid mashes of different things that maybe once before it was more these different things were in a box, and it's like we say that now because part of my job is pushing the music to the radio stations, and some of the radio stations, the formats, whether it's urban or rhythmic or pop, they kind of still live in these segregated boxes of like, this is what urban's supposed to sound like, this is what rhythmic's supposed to sound like,
really,
this is what pop's supposed to sound like. Yeah, on a broad level, some of them are holding on to these old titles and formats, but they've had to kind of bend that because the listeners have been bending and reaching over and picking records from different genres and bringing and clashing, and now you do have Ariana Grande and 2 Chainz doing records together. You know what I'm saying? Like, so the pop station can't totally ignore it because Ariana Grande is their lane, but the urban stations can't ignore it because 2 Chainz is their core artist. So, you kind of see this mashing and this hybrid of culture and music and entertainment. And, to me, it's dope, though. I like it.
You are saying a lot of things that it's almost like what you're saying is like a combination of what we discussed in previous episodes with my other guests. And just a few in a recent episode as well, we were talking about the state of radio. So it's interesting you talk about radio stations. I'm super excited to get into the interview now. Gosh, I was going to say something. I cannot remember. This is what I was going to say. What you made me think about, you were talking about Ariana Grande doing collabs with T-Pain. I look at that because what's happening with music now, years ago, it was like every genre had its lane. And they were very, I guess, distinct as far as their differences.
Mm-hmm.
Where now it's like with all these different crossovers and, artists from this genre work with the artists from the other genre. And it's pretty much like every genre now is using, implementing, or I'm not even going to say it's almost as if they are implementing elements from other genres. And, so it just, everything, it sounds so different now. And it's so funny because I go on Apple Music, right? If you ever notice, like there's rap, there's hip hop, and then there's like hip hop rap genre. I'm like, hold on, how we got 3 different
Right.
3 different genres?
Right.
Yeah, so it's like there's no one, and there's even like hip hop R&B. So it's like it's hard to even categorize different types of music now because of the blended sounds that come out of the different types of different kinds of songs and the different, even the artists nowadays, because you have artists who don't even stay within one genre. They just like kind of like I'll probably say a good example like Taylor Swift, country pop, a little bit of rock. Like you couldn't really throw her in one of those categories because she does it all, and you hear it in the music. So
and I think it's dope, man. I think it's
is
great for society. It's great for culture. It's great for growth, and evolution.
Mm-hmm.
And you look way back to like the 80s and you had like Run DMC do Walk This Way with Aerosmith, and it was like, whoa, like what, the rap group and the rock group, where then, then you fast forward and you have like, Jay-Z and Linkin Park and the Collision Course album, and they, you know what I'm saying? And so you see it slowly evolving over time. And now it's just like you have all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds doing stuff together. And I think that it's not healthy to try to limit people to a box because you're cutting off potential creativity and greatness. You know what I mean? Like, what if somebody told Michael Jackson he had to do just straight down the middle R&B or straight down the middle pop music? You know what I mean? Or, I know he's a controversial figure lately, but I'm still a fan of all of his music growing up.
Likewise.
But again, I'm all for breaking the mold, man. I think that it just makes us all better.
It does. It does. I definitely agree with you on that one. So I want to go ahead and get to asking you some questions. I'm pretty sure the listeners by now are going to be really excited to hear a little bit more about you and your experience, your background, and everything. My first question, and this is if you've discovered any artists, I guess who, and if not, I just want to know who are some of your favorite. I guess, but of the artists that if you have discovered, who are some of your favorites?
I wouldn't say that I was like the first to discover anybody. I don't work in
Hmm.
the A&R department, and typically they're the ones that discover artists. I have been on the ground floor of working with a few artists. I remember an artist that we started working with, and he had a song that was banging in a club on the south side of Atlanta called Central Station, a real hood club. And this is in the like around, I don't know, 2009, maybe it's 2008,
Hmm.
2009. It had a presence, and I remember we started working it and sending it out and getting involved with it, and it ended up taking off, and it became a big record. And it was called Oh
Hmm.
Let's Do It. And then next thing you know, Puffy and Rick Ross are dropping on the remix, and then he follows it up with a song called
What?
No Hands. And I remember
Yeah.
being in the car with my cousin. She's 14 years old at the time, and the label had not put No Hands out yet. We were working a record called Hard in the Paint at the time, and
Yeah.
she's scrolling through my iPod, and she finds No Hands, and she's like, "Oh, this is my favorite Roscoe Dash song," and she puts it on, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"That's not Roscoe's song, that's Waka's song," and she's like, "No, I found it on LimeWire, it's Roscoe's song." I'm like, "How is it on LimeWire? We haven't put that out yet." So you know what I'm saying? I hit my boss, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yo." My cousin's going crazy for the song. I think the song is a hit too, but my cousin, she's in the demo. She's like 14 years old, and she's like, all her and all her friends love this song. And
Yeah.
3 million album sales later, No Hands is the biggest song of Waka Flocka's career. And it was a big
Yeah.
record for also resurrecting Wale's career, who is somebody that
Yep.
ended up coming to Warner
Yep.
Brothers. And I worked with him on the Ambition album. And
Yeah.
just to kind of evolve the story a little bit, like I remember when Wale moved to Atlanta to work on the Ambition album for a while, and I remember taking him around in my Nissan Altima, looking for apartments and stuff for him to stay in temporary while he's out here, and then going to the studio with him.
Hmm.
And every day at the studio, he had a picture of a Grammy on the mixing board, and he was like,
What?
"Yo, this is what we're
Word.
this is what we're aspiring for, like Grammy music." And a year or so later, or months later, however long it was, I can't remember off the top of the head, a song off that album, Lotus Flower Bomb, got nominated for a Grammy. And so that moment was like, wow, I remember him working on the
Yeah.
project saying he was trying to make this type of music, and he did it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it
Yeah.
didn't win the Grammy, but it did get nominated. And that was big coming from where
Right.
he was
Right.
coming from after leaving Interscope and then having to start over at Warner Brothers. And
Hmm.
that was a big moment. There was another time that somebody I worked with hit me up and like, "Yo, this song is buzzing on the West Coast. All the kids are doing this dance. It's this big thing, and it's called You're a Jerk." And I was like, "You're a jerk? What?" And then next thing you know, the new boys, and I mean, and these kids recorded this song in an apartment, with like
Yeah.
a booth made out of a mattress. And this is the same version that we ended up putting on radio stations all across this
What?
country.
That's
They
what's up. Yeah.
raced up the charts, and
Hmm.
to see that jerk movement and all these kids, and like, this is something that was just in LA. And then,
Yeah.
months later, to go places like Jackson, Mississippi, and Atlanta,
Yeah.
Georgia, and see kids showing up in skinny jeans doing the dance in
Hmm.
their vans. And it was like, wow, man, like this is amazing. And I'm gonna tell you one more. I'm sorry, I don't mean to go on and on, but there
No. No.
there
No.
was
You're
this
good.
time I flew down to Houston because we had this new
Uh
artist out
huh.
of Houston that was doing a car and bike show out there for the radio station. So I flew down to cover the show, and they're like, "Yeah, kid has a big song in Houston." I had never heard of him before, he signed to the label, and I actually met him that night before the car show. We all went out, hung out. He was cool, nice guy, whatever, young guy. And then we go to the car show, and he goes on stage, and like thousands of kids just go crazy, right? And
Hmm.
after he comes off stage, they rush him. We took him over to his little booth to sign autographs. They're rushing the booth. He's signing people's chest, like, girls' chest and their
Yeah.
arms and their shirts. And I'm like, yo, like,
Wow.
what? And then so I come
Yeah.
back to Atlanta, like, man, this song isn't really popping anywhere outside of Houston, but this is a song that could work in Atlanta. I'm gonna break it in Atlanta. and the artist's name was Kirk O'Bangs, and the song was called "What Your Name Is," and it became a massive record in Atlanta, and it set us
Kurt
up for the
Cobain.
follow-up record called "Drink in
Yeah.
My Cup," which went platinum, and it was
Hey, that's my
eight weeks in
joint.
a row #1. Yeah, it was a month, right? And so I remember riding around in like SUVs, taking Kirko
hmm
station to station, strip club to strip club, promoting the record when nobody had ever heard of Kirko outside of Houston, and he ended
Yeah.
up becoming such a close friend. Like, people at the label used to joke like, yo, Kirko is related to you, ain't it? You ride too hard for that kid. Like, is that your cousin? That so from then on it was like cousin Kirko. Like that's like the little cousin. So like to see that go from, a movement just in a city, and then to see
Yeah.
it explode to a national hit record that sells millions of
Right.
albums, I mean millions of singles.
That's
It was
dope.
yeah, so stuff like that, a couple of those moments have been big. And one last one I'll tell you. I know I said that's the last one, but one more
Nah,
is
nah, nah.
when I was an intern, when I was still in college, I went to Morehouse here. Yeah, I live in Atlanta, and Morehouse
Hey,
is
my
in
uncle
Atlanta.
went to
So at the
Morehouse.
time, oh, did he? Morehouse
Yeah.
man, salute, salute. So yeah, when I was in college, I was interning for a company called BME Recordings, and it was owned by
hmm
Lil Jon, the producer and rapper. And he had this whole crunk music, which I didn't really understand. I grew up in Northern Virginia, and I was kind of influenced by Northern hip hop, like New York hip hop. I was Jay
Yeah.
Z, Nas, Mobb Deep, all that
Right.
stuff. The only real Southern hip hop I was listening to when I moved to Atlanta was Outkast and Goody Mob. And so this was all new to me. It was like culture shock. They introduced me to Lil Scrappy and Trillville, and they're like, yo, these are the next guys. And I was like, okay, it seemed like cool guys, but, I didn't totally understand the music. But then they took me to a high school party, and I saw 1,500 kids hitting their hand with their fists and saying,
Yeah.
we some head busters. And to see how big that crunk era became, off of that, like,
Oh
just
man.
remembering,
Ooh.
them when nobody knew it outside of like the high school kids in Atlanta, and then seeing it
Yeah.
go national. And that was pretty
Yeah.
dope too. So yeah, that's just a few from
Yeah.
my career that stood out.
You actually answered my other question. You gave me quite a few memorable moments from your career.
Yes,
That's
yeah. Sorry about that, man.
no, it's all good. It's all good. I think that's one of the most enjoyable things about being in this business and being around, some of the people I've had the pleasure of being around and talking to, like yourself, like just hearing some of those stories, like just always just fun hearing those
Yeah,
stories.
yeah.
Wow, at the end of the day, it's
It's
always
amazing,
cool, man.
man.
Always cool.
Like, man, when you
Um,
see a kid go from like just from having nothing, and then you see him hear a
yeah.
song on the radio for the first time, and then you see him
hmm
like a year later, and he's touring all around the country, making money, platinum
hmm
record. It's like that for me. That's what keeps me coming back, because that's rewarding.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So you probably may have said this already. I guess what do you enjoy most about what you do?
I would say that, like, just like the moment of seeing somebody with a incredible idea, and not really knowing how to get it out, and being able to be part of the conduit of connecting this great musical piece to people that and get need to hear it, and getting exposed and seeing the reaction.
hmm
Like, sometimes I've been on stage with an artist, and just seeing the reaction from the crowd, it makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. You know what I'm saying? It gives me chills
Yeah.
sometimes. It's almost like if you've been to a big sporting event, and when everybody's cheering in unison, and you feel that raw human energy that you can't recreate, like seeing that or
Right.
feeling that at a show or at a club, when if an artist that I've seen work so hard from when nobody knew who they were, and then see them have that moment, it's almost like seeing my daughter do something special at school. It's just a special moment being a part of that. So that's probably my favorite part, is just helping people execute and live out their dreams, being a part of that, and the relationships we
Okay.
build.
That's what's up. That's truly that's dope, man. I can hear it, and it just because I feel the energy when you
Yeah.
speak about the things that you've done in this business. Just again recalling some of those memorable moments, and just hearing me tell me what you enjoy most about what you do. Again, I can feel it.
Thank you.
Again, it makes me happy, and the listeners are going to be able to hear that as well because I already know when I go back and listen to this and edit it, I'm gonna be getting those same vibes.
No,
That's
that's dope.
that's really great. I tell you now, you're a dope dude. So coming from a dope guy
Thank you,
like
brother. I
yourself,
appreciate
like
that.
that's
Likewise.
that's
Likewise.
really cool. And that's pretty much all my questions, man. And definitely enjoyed conversation, and definitely appreciate you coming on the SANE Show. Sharing some of your experience and your knowledge of the industry, and just giving myself and the listeners a lot of great insight. I know definitely one of the things I want to stay away from those questions about how artists can get on and stuff like that. I know I'm pretty sure you get a lot of those all the time, and I wanted to do something different just to kind of
Yeah,
focus on you and your time in the business, and kind of pick your brain a bit just to learn just to learn about that stuff. And again, now it was a lot of dope stuff and a lot of great takeaways, and even for myself. So again, I
thank you.
thank you for coming on the SANE Show. I guess do you have anything, especially doing what you do, anything you want anybody to be looking out for, anything like that, and kind of shout outs or whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, we have a few new projects we're pushing, a few artists to check out for. Definitely, I'm working with Wale again, and he has a song out
Hmm.
called Pole Dancer with Megan Thee Stallion. So definitely, keep an eye out for that.
Okay.
Saweetie from the West Coast, she just dropped a new EP called Icy on Friday, and we have a single with Quavo called Emotional that we're pushing. So want people to look for that.
Okay.
We have a new artist we just signed from Baltimore named Shorty Shorty.
Okay.
He has a song called Betua is the radio edit, and it's a dope record. It has a dope vibe, and people are really reacting to it. So keep an eye out for that. And a couple others: Lil Zay Osama out of Chicago, Robin Hood Trey out of Atlanta.
Okay.
The whole TIG camp we're working with YFN Lucci, Q Money, and
Oh, bet.
Pasa. Yeah, so we're really in a growth space in the urban hip hop space right now, which is really dope for me because Warner Brothers
Hmm.
historically is more of a rock label. Warner Brothers is Metallica, Green Day, Linkin Park,
That's
Red
what's
Hot
up.
Chili Peppers. It's had its waves of hip hop. Like I said, when I first started, we had Mike Jones. He had just gone double platinum. The first
Hmm.
record I worked at Warner Brothers was the E40 My Ghetto Report Card album that went gold, and then we had a little lull. We had the Trillville and Scrappy stuff at Warner as well. I left the independent label, went to the major label, and they had that. We had the deal, the partnership
So,
with BME Recording. So we still, I was able to work that stuff at Warner, and then moving forward, the kind of second wave of hip hop was a lot of the stuff that we did with like Waka and 1017 Brick Squad, Gucci Mane, and then also the MMG stuff like Meek's first project and Wale's first project with Maybach Music. We had both of those albums.
okay.
So, it's seen its waves, and, Kirk O'Bangs, and we were working with Trillian T and Lil Boosie and Webby during that era. And
Hmm.
then all that stuff kind of went over to Atlantic a few years later, and we went through another lull. Then we came back with the partnership with OVO, and that's where we put out Party Next Door and Division. And, we've
Okay.
worked with I Love McConan with the Going Up on a Tuesday record and stuff like that. So it's kind of had its
Hey.
different waves, but now we have
Yeah.
another wave coming. It's really dope, man. We're signing a lot of really great music and a lot of great artists that are very passionate
Hmm.
and talented. So I'm just really excited, man. And the last thing I just want to leave people with is I got a great piece of advice one time. I was on the road with Talib Kweli, and he was doing a radio interview, and the host asked him, does it bother him that he's not more successful than he is? And, they quoted the whole Jay-Z line where, he's like, truth be told, skills sold, truth be told, I'd probably lyrically be Talib Kweli or whatever, so Jay-Z kind of gave him a shout out like, yo, his lyrics are dope, but, saying that type of stuff doesn't really
Yeah.
get the money, right? And
Right.
Talib was like, well, look, he's like, success is in the eye of the beholder. Success is what you make it.
Right.
So, I love to rap. It's a passion of mine. This is what I love to do. I love to make music this way and not have to compromise my music to force it to sell. I tour
There you
300
go.
days a year, making good money. I
Hmm.
get to see every country and continent on the globe.
Hmm.
So to me, that's success. It's all the aspiring artists out there, and producers and writers and, like creatives out there. Like, don't feel like just because you're not on the Billboard Hot 100 that you can't be successful and sustain substantial living and a comfortable lifestyle doing what you love to do in your passion, So that's
Right.
that's the last thing I want to leave people with. And check me out. I'm on
Appreciate you.
Instagram and Twitter and all that at Wilt Wallace, WILT WALLACE.
Okay. I'll be definitely. I'll make sure to definitely follow you on IG So you guys heard them, and definitely take notes as you, if you haven't done so, you may want to go back and take some notes from this interview. Appreciate you again coming on. And you guys make sure to go follow him again, Wilt Wallace on Instagram. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to follow the SANE Show on Instagram and Twitter at SANE_show, SANE_show on Instagram and Twitter, the SANE Show on Facebook. Remember, we got the SANE Show live recording coming up at Coco and the Director in the heart of Uptown Charlotte. Tickets are free and they are available on Eventbrite, so you have no excuse not to be there. So make sure to mark your calendars. Look forward to seeing you all there. And again, thank you guys for listening. Everybody from the U.S. to Canada to the U.K., Belgium, Australia, Germany, Panama, and everywhere else in the world that I may not be showing up on my listener map. But thank you guys for listening. Continue to like, share, and subscribe. And that is the SANE Show, episode 27, featuring Wilt Wallace, Vice President of Urban and Rhythm Promotions at Warner Bros. Records. And we're out.